Hey there, welcome back. This is Felix from Gold Vintage Watches. What looks like a Datejust, works like a Datejust, and wears like a Datejust, but isn't a Datejust? May I introduce the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Date. Without question, the Datejust is the undisputed favorite of many vintage Rolex collectors. But sometimes you want something a little different. Something that stands out, proving that you have some style and also swims a little against the mainstream of general taste. And with over 25 different references, 5 different movements and a variety of design combos, the Oyster Perpetual Date comes into the game. With the same iconic oyster case design, three-hand and date function, the only notable difference between these two models is about 2 millimeters. Let's check the Oyster Perpetual Date main features first of all before we go in depth. Production years 1950s to 2021. Case size 34 mm, 31 mm and 26 mm. Materials stainless steel and gold or even solid gold. Functions 3 hands, time with running seconds, date display. Bezel always fixed, stainless steel or gold, fluted, smooth or even engine turned. Dial black, silver, blue, gold, grey and many more. Lume from radium and tritium up to luminova, superluminova or even chromalite. Glass, acrylic or sapphire with cyclops lens. Movement, Rolex caliber 1035, 1565, 1575, 3035, 3135. Strap bracelet, Oyster or Jubilee bracelet and even a version with an integrated bracelet like the Oyster Quartz. Vintage references were also delivered on a leather strap. The Oyster Perpetual Date, which is also simply called Rolex Date for short, is thus wrongly overshadowed by its 2 mm larger and more famous cousin. The smaller case size is just right for many watch lovers, and we clearly notice that it is more and more a popular option on the second-hand market. Therefore, it makes absolutely sense to deepen the knowledge into this model series by taking a look at its history, its development and its current status. As mentioned earlier, there have been a variety of hand, dial and bezel options over the years, from black dials with baton hands in yellow gold cases to silver dials with alpha hands in steel cases. Next, we will take you through the reference jungle and shed some light on all the variants from the different decades. The Rolex Date made its debut in the mid-1950s. For comparison, Rolex launched the Datejust in 1945. Although the Rolex Date for men was the same size as the Air King for men at the time, it offered the added functionality of a date window. So it can be considered to be a middle ground between the Air King and the Datejust in terms of appearance. The Oyster Date Precision, on the other hand, was available in 35 mm with a non-automatic handwand movement. If we look at the dial after Rolex, we first see the term Oyster, which certifies the water resistance of the watch, followed by Perpetual, which refers to the automatic movement with a perpetual rotor introduced in 1945. The third term, Date, of course stands for the date window. The very first Rolex Date models were equipped with the then new automatic caliber 1035, so to speak the date version of the caliber 1030, which was used for the Submariner and the Explorer. These movements are calibers without date setting, which means that the date cannot be set independently of the hands. In the 1950s, these first model line consisted of 4 references. The stainless steel date reference 6530 with a smooth bezel, the stainless steel date reference 6535 with a turned bezel, and the stainless steel date reference 6534 with a fluted white gold bezel. The fourth reference, 6537, was a yellow gold date. Rolex also added the prominent cyclops lens on the crystal to magnify the date window. These magnifying lenses were relatively new, as Rolex only introduced them for the Datejust in 1954. The date windows on the watches were somewhat special, because they featured both red and black numerals, often referred to in collector circles as roulette date windows. Like most high-end watches of the time, Rolex used self-illuminating radium accents on the dial to improve readability in the dark. Apart from the size of the case, the Rolex Oyster Perpetual Date was identical to the Datejust, which explains the frequent confusion between the two Rolex watches. After the 4-digit system starting with a 65, Rolex introduced the next era in the 1960s, starting with a 4-digit number 15 and lasted until the end of the 1970s. During these 20 years, the caliber 1565 first operated at a standard 18,000 beats per hour, and later the caliber 1575 operated higher with 19,800 beats per hour, which had a correspondingly higher accuracy. But both movements were still without the quick change date mechanism. The 60s and 70s models retained their 34mm Oyster case, date window at 3 o'clock, acrylic crystal and cyclop lenses. However, in the mid-1960s, Rolex switched the luminosity of the dial from radioactive radium to the much safer but still self-illuminating tritium. Rolex dials with tritium are marked T-Swiss T, T-Swiss Mate T or Swiss T under 25 under the 6 o'clock hour marker. If you're interested in this topic of radioactive materials in vintage watches even more in depth, watch our video about it. We will link you the video in the description. In these 20 years, there were the 8 following references. Reference 1500/0, reference 1500/3, reference 1500/7, reference 1501/0, reference 1501/7, reference 1503/7, and last but not least, the reference 1550/5, a yellow gold shell case with smooth yellow gold shell bezel. A particularly notable model, as mentioned in the main features at the beginning, was the Rolex Date 1530, which Rolex produced from 1975 to 1977. These stainless steel models have the same angular case and integrated bracelet as the Oyster Quartz watches that were launched in 1977, but were equipped with a mechanical movement. The 1980s saw the start of a new generation of date models equipped with the caliber 3035 and bearing the 5-digit reference number 150. This caliber was the first automatic movement from Rolex to be equipped with a quick date adjustment. This meant that the date window could now be set independently of the hands, which of course made this model series much more practical than its predecessors. As always, the case size remained unchanged at 34mm. And acrylic crystals continued to be used. As befits Rolex, there was also a choice of materials and bezels. The main reference on this particular generation are as follows. Reference 15,000, a steel case with smooth steel bezel. Reference 15,010, a steel case with engine-turned steel bezel with polished details at hour. Reference 15,053, a steel and yellow gold case with fluted yellow gold bezel. Reference 15,037, 14K yellow gold case with a fluted yellow gold bezel. Reference 15,038 with an 18K yellow gold case with fluted yellow gold bezel. And last but not least, the reference 15,148/0, an 80K yellow gold case with a hammered yellow gold bezel. In 1988, Rolex introduced its newest self-winding date movement, the caliber 3135, which became the cornerstone of Rolex watches with date windows and was used until 2021. To house this new movement, Rolex introduced a new series of Rolex date watches in 1989, my birth year, with the 5-digit reference number 152. This reference was in production until 2005. Therefore, depending on the year of production for a Rolex date from this generation, it can either have tritium, luminova up from 1997 or superluminova from 2000 onwards on its dial. Other defining features include a scratch-resistant sapphire glass. As always, Rolex made quite a few case material and bezel style options available. First, the reference 15,200, a steel case with a smooth steel bezel. Then the reference 15,210, a steel case with an engine-turned steel bezel. The reference 15,203, a steel and yellow gold case with smooth yellow gold bezel. The reference 15,223, a steel and yellow gold case with a fluted yellow gold bezel and diamond set dial option. And last but not least, the reference 15,238, a yellow gold case with a fluted yellow gold bezel. The most modern of the Rolex date series, the 6-digit date 1152 family, made its debut in 2005. All key features remained as usual: water resistant, sapphire crystal, COSC movement, chroma light. However, Rolex slightly redesigned the case so that it appears wider than the previous versions despite the same official diameter of 34mm. The bracelets have also been redesigned and now featured a solid end and middle links, as well as an improved clasp for an overall better fit and feel. Originally, Rolex had produced 3 versions of the Date 1152. The reference 115200 is steel case with a smooth steel bezel. The reference 115234 is steel case with a fluted white gold bezel, diamond set dial as an option. And last but not least, the reference 115210 is steel case with a turned steel bezel. However, the turned bezel variant was discontinued after only a few years of production, while Rolex discontinued the 2 remaining models in 2021. Furthermore, it is important to note that Rolex also made Oyster Perpetual Date watches for women. These featured a smaller 26mm Oyster case and the same date window on the dial, as well as the Cyclop lens on the crystal. So in conclusion, a solid entry-level Rolex watch. The Rolex Oyster Perpetual Date, vintage or modern, is a wonderful luxury watch for everyday wear. It may fly under the radar, but it has its own rich history and diversity. The 34mm size makes it a good choice for many wrist sizes, especially since there is fortunately a growing trend towards smaller, more understated watches at the moment. And within the world of Rolex watches, the Oyster Perpetual Date prices are relatively affordable, especially when vintage models are considered. So that's it for today. We hope you enjoyed the video and we look forward to seeing you in the next one.